We start with a freeze point. Hey, team players, and welcome back. Crazy week yesterday. We had some players absolutely blow up, some blowouts that changed game scripts in ways we didn't have. But more importantly, we are at the midway point of the fantasy football season. And we're here to say, let's go win this thing. It's completely doable. We're talking about trades and waiver wires moves to do in the next couple of days to not just get your team in the playoffs, but to thrive and to dominate. This is going to be an amazing session. Answer your questions, team players. You've already loaded us up, and we're ready to go, starting on the other side. This thing here, Bob. When we start with, I think, in my opinion, biased, he's my quarterback. Jaden Daniels just came across the wire, not probably a long-term injury, and he's questionable for his upcoming game. Great news from my standpoint, but I wanted to share that as one of the things off the bat here because I'm sure it's going to come up once or twice.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of important injuries to take note of from yesterday. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr., shoulder injury, Kendre Miller. That could mean that maybe they don't move Kamara. Maybe they do still, and we see Devin Neal rise up. Bashal Tutin took on a more prominent role in this week's game as well. Bam Knight took on a more prominent role in the absence of both Connor and Benson. With Benson maybe coming back in a couple of weeks, there was a couple injuries on the wide receiver market as well. Terry McLaurin and Debo opened the door, and Noah Brown still opened the door for a couple of these other wide receivers to show up. Some of the ones that predicted to show up did not. What I found out too, Jacoby Brissett might be the current answer to the Cardinals quarterback situation.
I have said for years, basically any other quarterback not named Kyler Murray would be an upgrade. There's actually an entire commercial series of backups that are better performing quarterbacks, including Mitchell Trubisky, who can barely order a
now,
burger,
guys.
As we get
into this, we do answer every question here at Local Football Flavors, so feel free to leave your question. If you don't hear it right away, we will get to it. But I want to start here with this comment because it leads us into our first question from Aman. But this comment here from Wumbo, it takes the cake because we talk about this player every single week. We often open the show talking about this player, and it has finally come to the day where we are probably not going to talk about this player anymore. And the fact that they bring up a practice squad guy and he out-touched a second-round pick is utter lunacy to me. But, Aman, I share your sympathy as a fellow Travion Henderson owner, as owning stock in him in Best Bowl as well. I am, at this point, he is one of the dead assets that is probably at this moment in time bogging down many, many rosters out there, including your own. And I would not fault you at this moment in time picking up a guy like Brashard Smith, who saw in the absence of Kareem Hunt, who did get injured. We don't know the extent or severity of that injury as well, who did get injured, saw a smashing uptick in snaps and usage, as was something we thought could happen in the offseason. So if I'm going out there right now and Henderson, again, like I said last week, as of last week, Henderson was a hold. As we get to this week, though, knowing that the Patriots bye week is still a little bit away, right, Joe? We're sitting here going, it's week 14 is their bye week. Usually rookies make adjustment after their bye weeks, etc. It seems like no adjustment is going to happen, at least this season. So
they do.
If you need the roster space,
Vrabel hates him.
I do feel that Travion Henderson is a drop at this point in time in redraft leagues. Again, you're going to hold him in dynasty leagues, but at this point in time, one of our favorite preseason rookie darlings is an absolute drop at this point in time in my book. And I would drop him for a guy like Brashard Smith because at least Brashard's getting usage. So looking at this question here, I'm on 2 and 4. I have Allen, Henderson, Monty, Jamar, Diggs, Jennings, Ferguson. The bench is Goddard, Shakir, Hollywood, Spears, and Algier. I'm willing to get rid of anybody but Jamar. I'm thinking of buying low on Saquon or Genti and another piece for Josh Allen. What do we think? So when I look at this and I see that you need to move some pieces around, this is where I'm framing it at. And this is kind of a discussion point that we brought up a couple weeks ago as well in regards to guys that are looking out to trading away a player like Josh Allen. So Josh Allen just experienced the bye week. Okay. So his value, you ate that bye week. So he's going to have even more massive value down the line, depending on what the situation is for quarterbacks in your league. But as I see it, I think that a fair return for a player of Josh Allen's caliber, depending on what you're looking for, and this is especially considerate of if you're looking at, I would not trade Josh Allen, and I would not expect another quarterback back. I would be looking on waivers, and I'd be seeing what that quarterback that I could get off of waivers would be. What I'm looking for,
I want to move Allen if I were you, Amon.
What I'm looking for, this is what I'm doing. This is just an idea. Again, for anybody out there that is sitting at 2-4, has Henderson, needs to accumulate talent. By far and away on your whole roster, these are the two players that have the most value outside of Jamar right now. And that's Josh Allen and Ferguson. Okay.
Yeah.
You have the capability. Ferguson caught 2 touchdowns yesterday. You have the capability to push Ferguson out of your lineup and keep Goddard. Goddard can stay. You can pick up a waiver tight end. I'm sure people didn't pick up Arondé Gadsden this past week, as many people suggested it would be a good pickup. I'm sure people still have Harold Fannin on the waiver wire in some leagues, and there are going to be some waiver wire tight ends that have experienced buys that are going to be there as well. I wouldn't sleep on any of the Rams tight ends while Puka Nacua is hurt as well. But when I look at your roster, those are the two pieces that I would be looking at moving. Okay. You can also include Monty in this discussion as well, Amon. But looking at the pieces that you have, if you were to pair up, let's say you were to pair up Ferguson and Allen in a massive trade deal. This is arguably the number one quarterback in most people's opinion, and right now probably the number one tight end. So you're giving up the number one at each position, and you want to fill out the rest of your roster with talent, right? So these are the two players that I'm trading, and I'm sure that most people are experiencing issues at tight end, and some people are still experiencing issues at quarterback. For example, if I'm looking at trading Josh Allen, what I'm looking to get back is a solid producer at running back and a solid, and in your mind, you don't really need a wide receiver back. So I'd be looking at 2 running backs.
You need to get 2 running backs on this team.
I'd be looking to pair up a solid producer with a player that's in a timeshare, a la Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, something like that. Something that gives me a little bit of room to work with. So maybe that's like looking at, hey, I'm looking at a guy like Josh Jacobs, and I'm looking for a back end running back with upside back. Something like that, I think right now would be enough for me, because what you have to consider right now is that when we talk about trading at this point in the year, you sometimes have to overpay for a certain group or player because you need other things, right? So like you're sitting here 2-4, you're still not out of the realm of possibility, right?
But it's definitely not. He's fine. Depending on what tonight's outcome is, he could be 2-5. But looking at it, Joe, and seeing this as a deep dive, so we're taking a little bit more time on this, but it's helpful to think through this. If I have Josh Allen there, and I'm looking at the value of Josh Allen in your league, you might be able to, and this is just a suggestion, because we have a comment that's from Jason later on. You might be able to target the owner of Saquon Barkley, for example. No, you don't want that.
I'm just throwing out a way to approach something, okay, Joe? So, for example, you go after a player who's had a schedule and or usage issue, but their talent could overcome that if the opportunities are presented to them. You could also frame this in another way and say, okay, I don't want to move Allen, and I'm willing to give up a guy like Diggs, and I'm going to pair Diggs and Ferguson together to see what the best running back that I could get would be, and then just floating Shakir into my starting lineup, because nobody wants Shakir, nobody wants Spears, nobody wants Algier, nobody wants Hollywood Brown. So
I disagree on the last one there, and here's why, Bob.
You can disagree with it, but it's a fact.
No,
Okay.
Hollywood had this whole when Rice comes back. He's
hey,
not
Frosty, Hiteshew, we see you in the chat there. We will get to your questions as well.
Hollywood Brown was told as soon as Rishi Rice returns, he's a dead and useless asset. And there's truth to that. However, you were given a get out of free jail card when he scored that touchdown. So as a result, use Hollywood and Ferguson to go and get a running back. This team overall, you're not going to be able to move Jennings because you're not going to be able to get anything for him.
When you look at a guy like Ferguson, you might be able to trade Ferguson and a wide receiver, maybe to the guy who owns K9. Maybe if K9 has another pedestrian game this week, people were going to be frustrated with that. You could end up making something happen like that, which frees up that space, and you can move on from Trevion Henderson. Because when I look at the totality of your lineup, he's the guy that's killing your lineup the most on a weekly basis. None of these other players.
Sure, and that's why you got to replace the running back.
These other players, I think, so like if I'm looking at this and I say, okay, I'm pairing up Ferguson and Hollywood, or maybe they want Ferguson and Diggs. Like I said, I'm willing to move Diggs if I can get a piece, because I do think Shakir is fine enough on a weekly basis. Not great, but fine enough that he's not going to completely kill you. He's still going to keep you competitive in matchups if you can't find another wide receiver.
Shakir will, that's right. But the thing is you were given a free get out of jail card on Hollywood.
So but everybody knows that, though, Joe. Everybody knows that. So it's not, there's no value. Like if I'm peddling Hollywood Brown, I would peddle Hollywood Brown with Josh Allen as a kicker.
We were peddling with Ferguson. That's still the trade.
I get it, but what I'm saying is I don't think anybody.
If you take Allen off this team, you're never going to replace that value. You're never going to replace the value of getting Allen off of this team.
Joe, I get it from a consistency standpoint, but from a weekly basis, like if I can find a quarterback on the waiver wire, which you can in most leagues, that's going to try to get me or going to get me close to 20 points, I think that's enough to sacrifice in order to get to 2 running backs that are going to give me a solid floor of potentially 30 points in a given week. I'm willing to do that. I think that mindset wise, it sucks giving up the
assumption that there's someone like Stafford or Herbert on the waiver wire. I'm going off of the knowledge I have here.
In some leagues, there are.
Well, if there is, that's a different conversation. Amon, really, this comes down to where Bob and I are at is what is the depth of the quarterback position on your waiver wire? Because,
for example, ready?
I would buy, if you're asking me would I rather buy low on Genty or Saquon, it's Genty. And the reason for that is Philadelphia has had many games where they didn't throw the ball and Saquon still didn't perform. It's the opposite of last year. When Saquon was given these chances last year, he was rattling off 4 plus 4.5 a carry. He's under 3.5. They're still giving him the ball. He's just not doing anything with it. Genty, on the other hand, that's a disaster in Vegas world. I'm not sure that either one of the two are the ones that I'd want to be buying in at low. I mean, if you want to talk about someone buying in low, I'm looking at doing it. I'd rather do an injury stipulation play that someone comes back, but you don't have the wins to be able to do that game. So, Bob, I'm with you. Like maybe you're able to go out and get a Jacobs or a Cook if you include Allen in the trade. Mm-hmm. And if you do that,
honestly, Joe, I think that it's perfectly plausible. Before we move on to the next question,
there has to be enough waiver wire depth at quarterback, though.
Here's what I'm doing. Ready? You looking? Josh Allen will be if you move on from Josh Allen, you will be able to get a combination because people don't believe that the consistency will continue to be there. You can get a combination of running backs like a Javonte Williams and a Jalen Warren.
I would be all right with that. But again, there has to be a quarterback on the waiver wire to justify it.
If I could move those guys and I could move into like I said, a Jackson Dart, who, I mean, the jury's still out, but, Jackson Dart, if I can move, right now, Jacoby Brissett is perfectly fine as a spot start quarterback. A Daniel Jones, who might be on some teams, might not be. Stafford, I picked Stafford up in my league as well. So, and Tyrod Taylor, while Justin Fields is probably not going to see the field again this week, like we said last week, I gave it to week 9. Apparently it was this week.
Yep.
But guys like that are still going to accumulate points depending on the matchup in the defense. And if I could pair Josh Allen and say the guy wanted to be floated in Montgomery as well, and then he adds in a kicker at a wide receiver position that makes you better. This is something that can absolutely be done. It just needs to be done right now. And you can say, hey, I ate that bye week of Josh Allen. You have him for the rest of the year.
That's right.
So there are ways to play that it's very acceptable to do that. It's not necessarily that you don't have to buy low on Saquon, but I don't think, but the thing is, Josh Allen isn't the piece to buy low on Saquon with. That's what I'm saying.
Ferguson is.
Right. Because it's not
about just my Ferguson or Saquon conversation.
I still have a shot this week. Do I play Stroud or Darnold? I'm leaning Stroud currently. What do you think about that, Joe?
So for tonight's game, I think that there's a very real chance it's incredibly low scoring on both sides. And the reason I ultimately lean Stroud is the legs. They're both very good defenses, and I think that you're just more likely to get some scramble action out of Stroud than you are from Darnold. I don't think either one's throwing 3 touchdowns, so I would go with Stroud as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean Stroud too. Darnold, the team has a higher implied point total. But I do think that both of those defenses are going to be competitive. And I think that because of the lack of upside in the running game, I think I can see Stroud being a little bit more of a better play. I have them both around the same projections, but I think Stroud would be the better play there. Jason, do I think you win? I think you got a very good fighting chance, if not more, or if not better than a fighting chance to win in this match. Up by 30, you have Nico.
I'm pretty sure that Nico and White outscored Gibbs and Walker outright before we even talk about your lead.
I think there's a legitimate case that Nico and White together get you 30 plus, and you're already up by 30. So you at least clear Gibbs at the very minimum if Gibbs has a big game. If Gibbs doesn't have a big game, I think that you have it. So I like your chances there. Jason, should I trade Tyler Warren for a running back? I'm 6-1, but my team's running backs are so bad. Yes, I would. So
yes.
For anybody out there looking at Tyler Warren, Joe specifically was a big Tyler Warren guy coming out of the draft. I just worked a trade this weekend that moved Tyler Warren, and I was able to get Lamar and Quinshon Judkins. I gave up a couple of the pieces as well. And I think that when you have somebody as valuable as Tyler Warren right now, where he is consistently one of the top targets on this team, looking at the schedule going forward, projecting tight end points with consistency is sometimes difficult to do when a team doesn't throw to the tight end often. But for Tyler Warren, you are fairly consistent enough that you are going to get 8 to 15 points with a bit of upside every single week from Tyler Warren. And you are more so going to be on the higher side of that projection on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. And looking at your running backs, what I see is a group of guys that, all things considered, have had some great games when given opportunities, but also opportunities could dwindle for a variety of reasons for this group of players. Kamara, for all the reasons we have said before, Pollard for Spears, Vidal didn't have a great performance this past week, but they leaned a little bit more into the passing game. White, if Bucky comes back healthy, and Rico right now with what looks like to be almost a 50-50 split, if not very close to it. So I think that you should move Warren, and you can move Warren in a package for somebody. You can move Warren straight up for Jaylen Warren. You could buy into the split backfield of DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai, like I said last week. There are lots of different pathways to do, but I think that Tyler Warren's a great trade piece right now. He's going to continue to produce over the course of the season, but you most likely want more consistent production out of your running back room.
Yep.
And streaming tight ends is not the end of the world.
No, it's not.
You saw this week for everybody that streamed Arondé Gadsden, he had like 25 points depending on your scoring format. So, there are going to be options available to you depending on how people are working the waiver wire. And if you are worried about your tight end, maybe you want to buy low on a guy again, like guy like Kyle Pitts. Or you want to try to
buy low guy for tight ends is Njoku. Accept the injury risk and go from there.
And you're 6-1. You can afford it. My last pick, Fields, has to be dropped now. We're there. 3 people need a quarterback this week, and the best available is Dart. If I don't get them, there's some teams with multiple quarterbacks in need of fab. So my question is, which quarterback should I go after the rest of the season? I believe we touched on this last week, and my answer from last week was I liked Caleb last week. That game turned into a shit show for Caleb.
Dude, I'm sticking with Danny Dimes, man. You don't like him, Jason, but I'm sticking with him.
Jason, we're both on Danny Dimes, but there is now a reasonable argument, and you can look at the schedule to verify this, but there's a reasonable argument to make that somebody might want to sell Herbert after his come-up game. So I think that
if you're talking about the non-running ones, Dak's the one to take. I would rank these as Dimes, Baker, May, Dak. That would be my priority list.
Yeah, and I'm still on Danny Dimes. Looking at the schedule ahead, you have Titans, Steelers, Falcons, Chiefs, Texans, Jags, Seahawks, Niners. Those are going to be really competitive games. And I don't see a reason. Like I said, the only problem with Danny Dimes is that there is a chance that come the fourth quarter, if they have a lead or they put it into JT's hands and they just say, finish this. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but you have to be aware of that when you move into Danny Dimes. And I think he's probably the best of the bunch when you think about total upside, followed by Drake May. Drake May is going to cost you more than Danny Dimes potentially right now. Mm-hmm. And everybody, if you're in the chat, we do answer every question here at Local Football Flavor. So sit tight. If you can't sit tight and you want to watch us on a replay, feel free to do that. Santiago, do you think I should make changes on my team? Hurts, running backs are Jacobs, Kamara, Mason, and Dowdle. Jettis, Waddle, Olave, Wilson, Pearsall, Warren. It's a 10-man league. So what I'd say to you, Santiago, is that I like your team where it's at right now. But for the same thing that Jason said, when we look at your running backs, after Kamara, with Kamara included, Kamara, Mason, and Dowdle, there's reason to believe that all of those situations are going to vary on a week-to-week basis when everybody's healthy. So when Jones comes back, Mason will continue to get work, but the work will be a little bit different than what he's getting now because he's not getting any passing work or much passing work, if at all. So when Jones comes back, I don't know how that split they'll work it out because Mason's been pretty decent. Dowdle, again, very good running back, seems to be very explosive at this point in time. We just saw 2 breakout games followed by this game. I think you need a little bit more consistency in that room. What I would consider doing, just like I mentioned about Tyler Warren, is I would see if I can move like a Tyler Warren, Garrett Wilson. But you might be a little bit more confident with Garrett Wilson now that Tyrod Taylor should be the quarterback.
I would be.
So Waddle would probably be the piece that I would move out of that grouping
I agree.
If we're concerned about how this Miami franchise is going to elevate themselves this year. It seems like they're going to have some difficult games. Tua played very, very poorly. Waddle got injured. I'd keep my eye on that, but I would try to pair up like Waddle and Kamara and maybe Tyler Warren. And if they didn't want Waddle, see what else I could do. But I'd be looking to get into a running back that I feel would have some upside. And again, that's kind of who do you feel has upside in this moment in time? I said last week that DeAndre Swift and Kyron were 2 of my guys. Kyron had a bad game. DeAndre Swift had a great game. Yep. But a guy I'll continue to say, and it hurts my soul because this is a player that I've hated most of his career, most of the years, Javonte Williams. Good offense, great offense, solid producer on a great offense. He's experiencing what Chase Brown experienced last year, guys.
He's a much better player than Chase Brown.
Again, though, but he's getting the benefit of that.
Oh, yeah.
He's being put into better situations because of that. And he's going to get more expensive. The more games he puts out like that, the more expensive he's going to get. But that's kind of where I'm at. And Jason, if I was offered Barkley for Hampton and Rico right now, I'd do that. I would absolutely do that. We don't know And the news is that there is a very good chance that it is going to take longer for Hampton to recover. This being a redraft league, you can't wait for that. You need to accumulate.
Yeah, I don't think Hampton's coming back this year to be relevant for you.
Rico isn't going to do the same. We said last week that the time to sell was back then, because unless Chuba came back and was absolutely sucked, the volume for the Panthers is valuable. If you're getting the majority of the volume, you're going to be a valuable asset. If you're not getting the majority of the volume, it could be problematic. If somebody wants to do that right now, I'd absolutely do that. And I wouldn't even ask for Chase Brown. Okay, I don't see the need to get Chase Brown. If I had to move Hampton and Rico to get into Barkley, and I could start Jacobs and Barkley, or maybe I compare Barkley up with somebody else to move into somebody I actually wanted, I'd even consider something like that.
But yeah, if you can get that, you absolutely would do that.
Barkley necessarily wouldn't be my target, but I see it.
No, it's an upgrade over Rico, which is really what you're doing there.
Brendan, quick hit. Judkins or Scat rest of the season in a trade?
I'm Judkins all day.
I'm Judkins fairly consistently here.
Judkins has no competition for his touches.
But again, the New York Giants are looking good.
But Dart will steal stuff from Scattaboo, and Judkins doesn't have that problem.
When I look at
Judkins.
When I look at the back half of the year for a guy like Cam Scattaboo, and this is for anybody who's looking at Cam Scattaboo and anybody that's looking at Cleveland, is that these schedules they're the same schedules we saw at the beginning of the year, but they've changed drastically in terms of the ways these defenses have projected, right? So the playoff schedule, if you make the playoffs, or you're about to make the playoffs, these are the 4 games the Browns are going to have. Titans, awful against the run. Bears, awful against the run. Bills, will that be highly competitive? I don't know. It's probably going to be in the snow. And then the Steelers. Okay, great games for Judkins. All health being considered. Then I look at the back half of the season for the Giants. Lions, that's probably going to be a fairly good game for Scat. Patriots, probably going to be another decent game for Scat. Commanders,
I don't know. I'd rather have Judkins than both of those.
Commanders, Vikings, Raiders. So when we look at the playoffs, it's Commanders, Vikings, Raiders. Raiders suck. So I look at it. I like both in terms of.
I'd rather have Judkins. And Bob, we got a couple deep dives on here, so we got to honor the.
I like Judkins more on that. Frosty, it's good to have you with us. What do we make of BTJ's outlook looking forward? I feel like I can't do much if I want good value in return. You hold him. The time to trade him was after that game where he blew up for 20 points. People, but he could definitely come back. But with the injury right now, the outlook is not good. You aren't going to return your value. But here's the thing. You hold him if you want. But if somebody wants to assume the risk of BTJ, as we've talked about before with certain injury players, right? If somebody wants to assume the risk of that and you want to win now, you can absolutely trade him plus something else to get into a piece that's producing now. Like I said, overpaying is a thing. We can't think about BTJ as second round value anymore. Okay. We can't think about him as second round value anymore because he's not been returning what a second round value would be. So that is not even the question anymore. And if you see a player that you like better and you want to get him off your roster, do it. I mean, that's something that you kind of have to be the judge of there, Frosty, in terms of buying low, selling high, things like that.
Some scenarios as far as you want back, but the bottom line is you're, at this point, he's a better hold than probably anything.
Yeah, and in terms of Henderson, you mentioned here, Frosty, if it wasn't for the crazy kick return, most people wouldn't be hyped up. I mean, I could see that, but also everything we know about Ramondre Stevenson was screaming. And we even said this in the offseason, Joe, that I thought
he's still fumbling.
But I thought Ramondre was a good buy in the middle rounds of best ball leagues, but I wouldn't buy him in a redraft league because it was so inconsistent. The production was so inconsistent. And the fact of the matter is that it's regardless of the same situation. But I think what I've been reading, though, and this is the final thought on Henderson before we get to this question about Breece and then KJ's here. But when we look at Henderson, is that Henderson isn't doing enough right. And right now, the Pats are winning. And so they're going to continue to use the players that help them win. And the fact of the matter remains is that he's not breaking tackles. He's not doing anything. So he's more of a liability as the season has gone on. He's more of a liability right now than anything else in terms of winning. And that's what they want to do. So it doesn't matter if he's the best it doesn't matter if he might be the best at X. If he's not doing all of the other mundane stuff, he's not going to see the field, and it sucks. But we get past it. Down 25 in my Yahoo League, KJ said, I have Sharps and Seattle defense. What are my chances of winning? This is my last year playing Yahoo, sticking with ESPN. Depending on your scoring format,
I agree with that.
I do think that Seattle has a good chance to get at least 10 points. So you probably are looking at Sharps to get 15. And in order for Sharps to get 15, he's probably going to need to get 2 touchdowns. So I think the chances are kind of slim. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. Do we buy low on Brees if we hope he gets traded out of New York? No. Actually,
no, you can't buy based upon hopes of real life trades. Again, any player that gets traded in real life, their fantasy value declines. More so as receivers than running backs, but there's still a decline. Perception increases, which means you overpay for it, which is the worst thing you can do.
And we see all the questions in the chat, guys. Ravens, Jesse, Scorpio, Frosty, CC, we see all you. We will get to all your questions as we go through. But the thing I want to say about Brees is that it's not because Brees isn't talented. I do think that with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, that they are going to have an easier time being consistently moving the ball downfield because the game plan is going to be different. So am I buying low?
That was a bad defense they were playing yesterday. They couldn't do anything.
Am I buying low on Brees? Not necessarily, because I don't really think there's a piece that would be on a specific team that would be like a straight trade into it. It would be like a pretty big package, and he would try to
Bucky be like what you'd get for him.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's like that he's necessarily a buy low, because just 2 weeks ago he had a fairly competitive game. So, and we said that Carolina isn't the worst run defense right now in the league. That has shifted dramatically from what it was last year.
I get. Well, yeah, there are plenty of horrible run defenses out there, but the reality is that they aren't moving the ball. The Jets are
so Shoe.
Norman has returned.
When I look at this Shoe, absolutely. I told you guys last week that Bourne was one of my guys going into the weekend. If injuries stayed the same, those injuries did not stay the same, and therefore Bourne was kind of not featured in this lineup or not featured at all in this game script. And also you got to think too that AJ Terrell was probably doing a little bit of work on Jennings, a little bit of work on Bourne. Would I sell Bourne for Devonta Smith? Sure. But I just need you guys to understand about
Devonta Smith should not be on any league's waivers.
But this is the thing that I think a lot of people get mad about when they look at projections and when they talk to people who are producing content, right? And when you look at it with your own perspective, is that all of the stats and numbers were pointing that the Philadelphia Eagles were going to have a poor game passing because of what the Vikings have produced so far this year. That is what the numbers say, and numbers don't necessarily lie like that. But when we look at
I think what they missed, and this is the reality, is the majority of the quarterbacks the Vikings have played are the bottom half of the league, and that includes Rodgers as the best one they played.
The other
Hurt
thing to
can
add
actually
to that,
throw
Joe,
the ball, even though no one gives him credit for it. That's the reality.
The other thing to add to that, though, is that these projections weren't that far off. Remember us saying A.J. Brown wasn't our favorite player this week, but if you needed to pivot into him and you had the ability to do that, you could. But also, I said they're limiting the wide receiver 1 to 4 to 6 total receptions. And what did he catch? 4. And he did a lot.
Here's the reality. This is the part no one wants to say. Devontae is the receiver 1 now.
I disagree.
No, he is. When you look at this, if you look at when it was go time moments, they went Devontae more than anyone.
Well, that's a dramatic paradigm shift from last year.
It sure is.
Last year he wasn't, but I think what you need to understand, if you're
that's
buying
why Devontae should be on every. There's no league he should ever be on waivers. This is no doubt.
But what you need to remember,
Joe, he should be on waivers.
What you need to remember, Joe, is that the Eagles can beat you in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
There's not just one.
Yeah, they're not the Cowboys.
Like if you stop Devonta Smith, then you have to contest with Dallas Goedert. If you stop it, and we knew this going into the season, and you're going to have, if you Devonta Smith should be rostered, but if you are going to ride the ebbs and flow of the Eagles, you are just going to experience those levels of frustration on a week-to-week basis because, again, the matchups dictated that these two players would not outperform the metrics, and they did. And that happens at times when we look at these. So, you just have to go the ebbs and the flows sometimes with these Eagle players. And the one player that's been left out more often than not this year has been Saquon Barkley. And it sucks. So Craig, okay. I don't know why it's coming up at Shoe. I don't know. Do we see someone like Ridley getting traded to Buffalo? Sure, but I don't see it being valuable to you. We saw last season Buffalo picking up Amari Cooper. And yeah, Amari Cooper's kind of damaged goods at that point in time, but that didn't
still
change
better
anything.
than Ridley is right now.
It didn't change anything. So would it be a good thing for Ridley's stock? Sure. But I don't think it would be necessarily anything that you would want to buy into in terms of a fantasy perspective. And you're welcome, Jesse. For anybody out there that played the Browns and the Panthers, kudos to you. Those are two of the defenses that I had on my list to play.
So, Frosty, I have been big on getting rid of Tet, and I am not switching that. I really believe that Tet is one of the most overpaid, overvalued players in the league. On an offense that, by the way, just lost their quarterback. So it probably will get better. Just like the Jets got better and Arizona got better.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if it's like indeterminate downgrade in terms of a passing perspective to go from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton. I mean,
I think it's an upgrade.
In 7 attempts, he had 60 yards, which is around like half the yards that Bryce Young had the rest of that game. I do think that you're going to see a more run-first mentality out of Carolina, knowing that they have the two running backs. If Bryce Young's deal, I heard it was a high ankle sprain. So assuming he's out for a couple of weeks and you're running through old man Dalton, I could see them being very conservative with their offensive approach and leaning a little bit more heavily on Chuba and Rico, and then pushing the ball downfield with Tet when they have the opportunity to do that.
Well, and specifically looking at the lens of Tet, in general, when the old vets come in, they don't throw the balls to the rookies. It's just a generality coming out of it.
Looking at the schedule, though, the next 3 games, Bills, Packers, and Saints, you could probably dictate that all 3 of those will be losses. So maybe they lean a little bit more into Tet. Maybe they say, hey, give him work.
Oh, they try to throw the ball against the Packers. They will get 40. They will be on their 6th-string quarterback.
So I see him as not a player that I want to buy into, but if I can buy into him low enough, I would. If I had the chance to sell him, I would too.
Jesse, I would sell him for Brees. I think you can do that.
Yeah, sure. If you were able to get something done like that, Tet for Brees, sure. I have 117 points. Opponent has 140 and a kicker with Bates. And I have Nico and McLaughlin. Do I have a chance? Yeah, you have a chance.
Yeah.
McLaughlin is one of those kickers that can throw up 15 points by himself. And with the amount of weapons that are hurt with
Dude, Collins is getting you 22 tonight in a PPR league.
There's a chance. There's a narrative that I can write, Jesse, that you do have a chance. Frosty, this is something that we said at the top of the show. I would. Is Brashard Smith somebody that I would grab? Yeah. And the reason I would
touches.
The reason I would grab him too is that this Patrick Mahomes, and again, Drake May has been having a very good season as well, but this Patrick Mahomes-led offense is always one that's interesting to buy pieces from. While it might be a bit inconsistent in terms of what you're going to get from each piece, the running back in this space still is going to need to perform. And Brashard Smith is getting work. He used to be a wide receiver. He's going to get some passing game work. And I think that that's something that you can totally buy into. People are going to think you're a little crazy, and you might be disappointed if Travion Henderson has a great game, but you'd never have started him anyway. Like that's the thing
true.
At this point in time, you're not going to start him anyway. And this is the other thing to keep in mind too, is that when Hunt
even if Stevenson gets hurt, you have no faith that Vrabel will give him the ball.
Yeah. So when Hunt went down, okay, in this offense, they ran 65 plays against the Raiders, okay? And in those 65 plays, Brashard Smith saw 14 carries, 5 targets, and Pacheco saw 15 carries and 2 targets. You can easily see them leaning into Brashard Smith a little bit more in the future because they know that Isaiah Pacheco is not their guy. So That's my viewpoint on that. Yes, Brashard Smith is worth the pickup. I have Daniels, London, Lamb, Henry, Taylor at tight end, and Judkins at flex. I have Caleb and Johnson on the bench. I'm tuned for. What do you guys think? Ravens, I think you probably came across some bad luck. Seeing that Daniels is your quarterback, you probably came across the injury luck. Caleb has been underperforming. Then Quentin Johnston got hurt, and Henry hasn't been performing well. I think you're due for an uptick in wins.
You are.
But one thing that you need to take into consideration is that tight end position. If that's Mason Taylor, I would play around with that position a little bit more. And I would
stand it while the joke is still hurt. You can pick him up off your waivers.
Honestly, to tell you the truth, Quentin Johnston probably came back a little bit too early because he didn't get the targets that everybody else got. But I would
also had a drop that really cost them.
I would tend to lean into moving on from Johnston right there. And maybe even if somebody's not afraid to take on whatever injury Daniels has, you won't find me scoffing at moving on from a guy like Jaden Daniels as well in order to give my team a better chance in the next coming weeks.
But what do you want to improve on his Ravens fan? You know this better than anyone. They're about to play the softest schedule in the world. And
it's the tight end.
Taylor's the tight end.
No. He's saying Taylor at tight end, so that must be Mason Taylor. Unless that's Jonathan Taylor at running back.
So who's your second running back is the question then? Because that's
second running back looks like it's Judkins. But we'll Ravens, leave a comment. Leave a comment in the chat and we'll help you out a little bit there.
We need your whole roster, Ravens.
We wouldn't need the whole roster.
King Henry is going to go off. I don't know if that's one we need to really change that much. The Ravens themselves are going to fix that for you. And speaking of the Ravens, under no circumstances am I trading out of Lamar.
Well, I'm looking at your team. Here's some things to keep in mind, right? You're carrying right now. It's a 2-quarterback league. And right now you're carrying the Niners quarterback situation, Lamar, Flacco, and Daniel Jones. Right now, I'm looking at your running back room and I'm seeing RJ Harvey, which has been, really terrible, but he is getting work in the passing game, which is nice. Kamani Vidal, who could turn it around the next week. There was more of a pass-heavy situation in Scadaboo. You need a running back. And Kyron is one of those guys that is going to have up and down games. He's going to have to get the touchdown in order to be valuable. With this team, they didn't give him as many looks in the red zone as typically they might give him on a week-to-week basis. They were cooking through the air. So do I think this is worth it? Yeah, I do think it's worth it. But I would be hesitant a bit to sell Lamar coming back from the injury off the bye. Because you ate the bye, you ate the injury. And I'm not entirely sure that that's the right price for Lamar.
It's not. It's nowhere near the right price for Lamar.
But I do think you need a running back. So if I had the ability, if I had the ability to say trade, and like I said, I think that Daniel Jones is an amazing quarterback for the rest of the year. But if I had the ability to trade out of Jones and gather a running back and a quarterback from that trade.
You don't even need another quarterback back. You have, Flacco is a quarterback league. I personally would start Flacco until you don't.
It's a quarterback league, so it's understandable.
He has 5. So Jones is probably the one I'm moving because, or put it this way, if you're content on playing Jones and Lamar, which you should be, then you're not going to get enough for Flacco yet. But you move whichever one of those Niners or both Niners and get no quarterback in return. Because here's the other problem. You're doing a 2-for-1 on a full roster. So I would do the 2-for-1 in the other direction. I'd see if he would take both of the Niners quarterbacks for something like that, and forget about Herbert.
And what
under no circumstances am I moving Lamar.
Actually, this is kind of what I try to do here. Okay, just being brutally honest with you. All right, I would take BTJ.
Oh, so no, actually, here you go. BTJ. Here's something a suggestion.
I mean, you guys know
I
like
would do BTJ and Flacco for a Dune saying you guys have heard me hate on the Bears.
I wouldn't do that, Scorpio.
Straight weeks.
I wouldn't do that, but I think it's an interesting thought. That's kind of the approach that you could also take too without trading Lamar, is trading into overpaying a little bit for a player, knowing that you want to just be moving on from BTJ. It's fair. It's fair to think that way. Hey Flo, sorry to hear. I feel you, man. Igbuka and Bucky injury killing me too. I need them to come back with fire in their ass over the next couple of weeks. Can I even trade Rico for anything good or just hold him? You can.
Your last chance, man.
But the best chance to do it was last week. We did tell you guys that the best chance that you could have done it was last week. If you wanted to hold him, you could though. But the fact of the matter is that he's not going to return you the massive value that he was getting you last week. I do see them leaning on the run a little bit more over the next coming weeks, with Bryce Young being hurt and Andy Dalton being a little bit older. But again, his value, you could probably trade him with something else to move into a running back like the DeAndre Swifts of the world. People might be concerned about Ken Walker. Like I said, those are two guys that, looking at things, situations can change. We know this, but we do know that when Rico is the bell cow, he's a great asset, and you can sell that in a trade as well. Anybody that's joining in the chat right now, feel free to leave a question or comment in the chat. We do answer all questions and comments here at Local Football Flavor. If you don't hear your question right away, feel free to join us on the replay. CC, crushed with Aaron Rodgers and the Jonnu stack. Who we like tonight, fellas, Tez or Shepard? I'd love to hear, CC, that you started Jonnu after our conversation about Jonnu being potentially a good play. That Steelers game was wild. I don't think there has been a recorded game in the modern era of NFL history where 5 touchdowns went to tight ends. 5 different touchdowns went to tight ends. I don't think that's 5 different touchdowns went to 4 different tight ends. I don't think that's ever been done in the modern era. People can verify that, but that was wild. In terms of tonight, I think that Tez is the home run guy. If I need a home run, I'm starting Tez. If I need like a basic 7 points, I think that you're going to get that out of Shepard.
No, I don't think you can play Shepard. Evans is playing. I don't think Shepard gets on the field. I think it has to be Tez for the home run.
Is Keenan a good sell high? I need a running back back. Yeah. Here's just why. So we've said this over and over again, but it needs to be said again and again because it's important when it comes to a guy like Keenan Allen. You look at this game, the Chargers threw the ball, or the Chargers were on the field for 76 plays. Yeah. Justin Herbert was on the field for 76 snaps. Okay. When you look at the totality of the snaps, Keenan Allen was on the field for only 49 of them, which is fair in his snap share so far, but he got 14 targets, which is
not sustainable.
Which is an absurd number. And he's been doing that fairly consistently because he's a reliable target for Justin Herbert. You can sell that. Are you going to get anything better with that? Yeah.
You might. It all depends upon where your league's at.
I think you could probably move Allen into a guy like Montgomery. If you need a running back and you're looking to get a running back with upside on a week-to-week basis, you could sell him in for a Montgomery type of player.
Absolutely. You might even be able to talk him into a Swift.
You can pair him up with somebody else and try to move into a Josh Jacobs. You definitely can't get
Allen's
into it.
Definitely a guy I want to get rid of right now.
Is Mason a good hold to have with Jones returning soon, or try to sell for a better running back?
I'm riding Mason until the wheels come off.
If you were to pair Keenan Allen and Jordan Mason, you can absolutely get into somebody you really want. If you want to sell both of those, Frosty, I think you can.
I wouldn't sell Mason.
But I'm saying I think you can. If you're worried or concerned about Jones, you can. I wouldn't sell Mason yet, but there, like I said earlier, there are concerns that I have.
I also want to be concerned about Jones.
That's fair. It's fair to have that. Would you drop Bourne from Nungai or Marks? Yeah. I mean, at this point in time, I still see that Bourne is going to have some good games in the future. I don't think that he's going to be fully written off, but I do think that it was slightly the game script. I mean, why take the ball out of Christian McCaffrey's hands if you were doing it so well in the first place? So Bourne did get some looks in terms of target share. So that piece of it needs to be considered as well. But yeah, I think what I said last week, Joe, you were dogging me for saying Kamanungai last week. You were dogging me for saying Kamanungai the week before. But Kamanungai is going to be useful. The one thing that I want to say, though, about Kendrick Bourne is that Juwan Jennings did overstep him in terms of the snap count and did take some of those downfield targets away from him. Christian McCaffrey had 8 targets as well. But in totality, he was the 3rd target earner on the team, tied with George Kittle at 2. You could see that drastically changing over the course of the next couple of weeks. But he did catch both targets. So, I mean, like, he is a reliable enough player. Would I drop him? Sure, for a running back.
This leads into Frosty's next question. Can Marks take the gig? And Marks is coming out of his bye. And one of the things that's true throughout this league, we mentioned it a couple times with Hendo, is that coming out of the bye is when you're going to get the opportunity to prove it. Not necessarily the first game, but you're going to get those chances. Can you actually do the pass blocking type stuff, which is what Marks needs to do to be able to hold his spot? So Marks isn't a start for me this week, as I mentioned, but it's a definitely keep interesting to watch, because if he's getting carries in the second half, particularly the fourth quarter, and the game script is either neutral or they're behind in it, then yeah, it's a very good sign Marks was taking Chubb's spot.
So it's interesting that right now projections are putting him like a half, like almost a full point higher than Nick Chubb. And that's a situation that would be interesting to monitor. Marks is an interesting player to pick. I tend to like...
That's ESPN punting.
I tend to like Manungai. No, it's not ESPN, by the way. But I tend to like Manungai a little bit more because, again, that run blocking is actually pretty good. And we know that Caleb's going to falter and make mistakes.
That part is true.
So I think that DeAndre Swift and Manungai have a great schedule over the next 3. You know, we just had a great game, next 2 games. I think it's worth it to buy into him. Do I think he fully takes over the role? Probably not this year, but eventually. CC, do we think that Travis Hunter's volume this week was a fluke, or could he usurp BTJ as the number 1? He got dropped in a couple leagues, and I'm thinking about picking him up. So, Joe, we actually went back, and we talked about this last week. It was a question, Kendrick Bourne vs. Travis Hunter. You were on Travis Hunter. I was on Kendrick Bourne pending the injuries. Travis Hunter was a phenomenal play in terms of volume this week. And we did say, and if you go back and look at the numbers, which I'm going to do for you guys right now, and you look at volume, the volume wasn't really a question at this point. Week 1, 8 targets. Week 2, 6.
Well, so much of that was garbage time, though. When Hunter was getting the rock.
5, 3, 7, 14. It is very likely. Do I think that 14 catches is a red herring? Yes. Or 14 targets, red herring?
That's
yes.
my point.
But do I think he stabilizes somewhere in the 7, like 5 to 7 targets a game? Yes. And he's the type of talent. I said this. You could go back and watch the last episode. I said, can he do something with the targets? Absolutely. Has he done it yet? No. He did it this week. So when you look at it and you say, if he has the opportunities to break in, this is the same case for guys like J-Mo as well. He perfectly fits into that J-Mo mentality. If Amon-Ra goes out, J-Mo's going to see better looks. He's going to see the majority of looks. If BTJ is out, they're going to pass the ball to Travis Hunter, because you said, Joe, last week when we talked about Travis Hunter, and I said, well, they have to give him more looks on offense in order for him to be productive. And they did. So if they continue to do that, you can absolutely
pass breakups on defense. So they're getting what they wanted out of them.
I'm not expecting 17. I'm not expecting 27 points, because that is an absurd number. But he probably gets somewhere of, like, if they push him downfield instead of giving him all the targets near the line of scrimmage like they had been doing the previous 5 weeks of the season, if they give him more downfield targets, he will be able to do something. And you could see something around the vein of 4 catches, 60 yards as a nice game for Travis Hunter on a weekly basis, which puts them into wide receiver 3 flex territory. And I think it's worth it. Big Bando, would y'all trade future second for Ayuk now?
I would not.
The report says that he's not even close.
Fantasy.
They said the reports have been saying that he's not even generally close to being back on the field in football shape. I wouldn't trade a second. I would use that second and first to go after somebody that I really want. Not Ayuk.
I would trade a second for an injured Bucky, but I would not do for an injured Ayuk.
Frosty, it seems like when Mooney's playing, London's production drops, whereas when he's out, London pops up. This is a fact. You go back and you can look at London. You can look at any stat sheet. Good for Mooney, bad for London. But again,
it's the fact that London's overrated. He can't outperform Mooney. I mean, that's the answer.
He's not. London is not overrated.
Yes,
I think he's rated. He's rated where he's not the best wide receiver in the NFL, but he's rated where he needs to be.
In the second round every time.
But again, this is not. But again, this is not Darnell Mooney's fault. This is an Atlanta.
No, there's a reason to buy Mooney and not get London. Which is my point.
Listen, this is an Atlanta Falcons problem where it's not. Drake London can do a lot. He's going to get consistent targets. That is not changing. Okay. He's going to get consistent targets of like where I said in that Travis Hunter number, like that's 7 targets. Okay. 7, 8, 9 targets. If he hits on that 10, 12 targets, of course he's going to have massive games. Any wide receiver that's getting 12, 14 targets, we saw it with Kendrick Bourne as well. If you're getting that massive amount of targets, you are bound to have a better game than the rest of your people around you. But on 7 targets, it's reasonable for a wide receiver who gets 7 targets to catch around 40 to 60% of those targets, right? I mean, nobody has 100% catch in the NFL right now. So you look at it and you say, okay, what is Drake London's statistical chances if he gets 7 targets and he catches X number of them?
He should be catching
how many yards is going to come out?
7 targets,
right? So 4 targets on 4 targets, 40 yards isn't like an absurd amount of yards to get on 4 catches. It's not what you want, but we hope for better games. But when Bijan gets in there and Bijan can do a lot, I mean, some games they look like a mess and some games they look like they have it all together.
The fundamental answer is Drake London isn't as good as everyone wants him to be.
Disagree. Nino, normally how long into the day does it take till we get the report? Still wondering about Igbuka and Evans today. Igbuka was a true game.
The final reports come out an hour before kickoff. And that's on a Monday Night Football game. That's all you get them.
I don't think Igbuka plays today. Play 1, Evans or Igbuka. I'd probably be on Evans because I do think he plays
Igbuka
today.
Ain't playing.
I do think he plays today. What team would you like to see Jacoby get traded to? Seems like it's about 80% he gets traded at this point. Another year, another Raiders receiver unhappy. When I look at Jacoby Myers, what situation do I think that he would be best suited for versus where do you think he is going to land?
I'd actually really like to see him in Seattle.
I don't think he'd fit Seattle. I think he'd do good in Seattle.
They need someone who can push the ball.
I mean, I wouldn't be mad if the Steelers got him, to be honest with you.
I don't think he fits in the Steelers.
I think he does. I think he does.
The bottom line is it doesn't really matter where he goes because he's not going to perform as well as people want him to.
I mean, he's been underperforming all year, so it's a little sucks a little bit. Got screwed over. My JD5 needs 10 yards before he got hurt on a 10 play for 2,000. I was mad. Yeah, I mean, like, Daniel's going down. These injuries, it feels like last year we had minimal impacts to large fantasy stars in terms of injuries last year. The year before we had massive implications. Last year was just CMC was like the really biggest name.
Oh, Lamb went out.
Lamb went out, but again, he came back. Nico came back as well, and they lit it up on fire. But when we talk about the totality of the league,
they all went out around this time, and then they came back for the playoffs.
Yeah, which was nice. But Daniel's going down again does hurt because you just lost. You didn't have him for a couple of weeks, then you got him back.
But they did say it's not a big deal, and he could be playing next week. So
I have ETN. Nino says with K9, Derrick Henry, Marks, and Spears, would you go and use your number 1 priority on Rashard Smith? I think I would. At this point in the season, when we look for players that could potentially pop off, one of the things I want to take note of is how interesting the running back position in an Andy Reid-led offense, coached offense, is late in the season. Mm-hmm. If you want to go back to Jerick McKinnon, we can go back to Jerick McKinnon. But when you look at pass catching, specifically pass catching or running backs that are capable of catching the pass, passing the catch, but capable of catching the pass and capable of opening up plays in this offense, you have to go after Brashard Smith. Even if he doesn't perform well, you have the running back capital right now to sit on him until you're confident that he has a great game. I think I would do that in a heartbeat. Jesse, I dropped Golden for Chubb. Was this a bad move? I don't think so.
Yeah, it all depends on the night, but I think you should be all right.
I love Golden a lot, but again, even in a love, again, they don't. I've said this last week, and I'll say it again. Quarterbacks like Jordan Love are a good real life quarterback because, yeah, they can put up good statistical numbers for you, but this team runs through Josh Jacobs in the running game. I mean, Golden still got a lot of routes, a good amount of targets coming out of the bye. That's what we want. The wide receiver room is in trouble, but having Chubb is not bad. I don't see on a week-to-week basis, I don't see the difference between Chubb and Golden as very high. I probably wouldn't start either depending on the situation, but I think that Golden's still going to be there on the waiver wire eventually, and Chubb might not be depending on how this week goes. Quincy, down by 32. I have Sam Darnold in my kicker. Do I think I get it? He has the Tampa defense. I think it's possible. In order for that to happen, you're going to need Sam Darnold to get to 28 points for you. So if it's possible. He's going to need 3 touchdowns and 300 yards, I think, to get somewhere even close to that. And Joe said that he doesn't see Sam Darnold as having a 3-touchdown game. I do think that it's in the realm of possibility, but I think it's going to be pretty tight. Have Mason on the bench, McLaurin, Vidal. So this goes back to Ravens question. I have Mason on the bench, McLaurin, Vidal, Darnold, Mooney, Gadsden, Mims on the bench. Okay. All right. So going back up, Joe, let's find Ravens here.
Yeah. So Vidal is his number 2 running back right now.
Okay. All right. And now, Ravens, can you clarify, is that Mason Taylor or Jordan Mason? And is that running back Jonathan Taylor or is that tight end Mason Taylor? That's kind of where I want that clarification at to kind of help you out a little bit better there, Ravens. And we'll get to your question here. Quincy, would you trade for Lamar and offer him my Rice, Igbuka? All right, what would I offer him? Just dropped Henderson. What's my offer? Are you doing this? We have 3 quarterback in a 10-man. He has Nix and Dart also. All right, so if I'm putting together a trade, because I just did this myself. To go out and get a guy like Lamar. I ended up going out and getting Lamar and Judkins. But when I look at this team, who would I offer for Lamar?
I would do Igbuka and Wilson. But I would never accept that from the other side. Maybe Igbuka and A-Chain.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I don't really.
Well, you could sell CMC at his absolute peak. That's probably not a bad idea either.
If it were me, I wouldn't target Lamar for your team. I do like the idea of targeting Lamar, but in terms of player capital, I think you're going to have to give up more than you actually want to give up to move into Lamar right now. Because again,
I would do CMC and Garrett Wilson right now in a second. And
I wouldn't. When it comes to, if I'm putting a trade together for Lamar there, I'd be offering something to get the conversation going, like Sutton and Achane, to get the conversation going. I wouldn't start out with CMC because I'd want more.
So you don't start out with CMC, but you accept the fact he's going to be in the trade.
But honestly, I wouldn't. You don't even. If I'm going after Lamar and I'm using CMC as a trade piece, and this is just speculation right here, Quincy, and this is up to you ultimately. But if you were to trade CMC, you're going to get back Lamar and more. CMC is not.
Here's a good thing for Nino.
You won't have
pretty good equivalent of how high CMC is. For CMC for Jamar Chase and Mason, I would do that in a second, Nino. This is the time to sell CMC. This is the time to sell CMC.
You said that last week, and he breaks out with like another 40 friggin' points. But
yeah,
again,
well, this is the time, baby.
like I said about CMC in the past, I know there were some questions a couple weeks back about Jonathan Taylor versus Saquon Barkley and players like that, Bijan, etc. And if you were selling Jonathan Taylor into Bijan, is it a good move? Is it a bad move? What you got to understand from like a player capital perspective, right, is that football is a little bit of economics, okay, in terms of touchdowns. And outside of an outlier year like Raheem Mostert had 21 touchdowns, right? Typically speaking, a very high-end running back is going to be somewhere in that, like, what would you say, Joe, like 16 to 20 total touchdowns through the air and on the ground. So when you look at the totality of where CMC is at right now already, when you add in the injury risk plus pieces returning, again, you can take that from whatever perspective that you would like to take that from. But when we look at touchdowns right now for Christian McCaffrey in terms of all of the touchdowns that he has, he's sitting at he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He has a total of how many touchdowns? So he has 3 total rushing touchdowns on the year, and he has 5 total touchdowns. So CMC right now, if you're projecting him to do better when all these pieces come back, and by better, I mean score more touchdowns, then you're projecting CMC somewhere in the vein of like 12 to 14 touchdowns. So he still has a lot of room to live within that zone. Jamar as well. Jamar is sitting there, just looking up it real quick here, Joe.
Jamar got 23 targets when Flacco showed up. That guy's going to get the ball like crazy. I am not worried about Jamar at all.
No, I'm just going from like
has a lot of worries, and the fact you're getting Jamar and a piece, that should be a no doubt do it.
Right now, Jamar's sitting around 5 touchdowns, and it's very projectable that you could put Lamar at 10 to 12. So the touchdown upside is still there. And like you said, Joe, the extra piece of Jordan Mason is nice because you get that return at running back. I'd do something like that. I would absolutely do something like that. Like Joe said, both of those players have 40-point upside. And I don't think you're hurting yourself at all in the slightest. Which cornerback will be on Nico? And are the Seahawks DBs still out? I have not seen any news for that right now. When we go to the shadow report for this week, looking at week 7 here and looking at these games that are coming up. Sorry, guys, just pulling up some stuff here. Nico will be not necessarily shadowed the majority of the time, so it doesn't really matter who's on him. Yeah,
Seattle doesn't shadow.
So I would say that it doesn't matter. Nico is in for a decent enough game. Joe's projecting 22. I think it's fair to put him around 17. Are Rome and London sell high candidates? Not right now. You're not going to sell after two poor performances in a row by Rome and 1 poor performance this week from Drake London. You aren't going to sell them at their maximum value. They are holds unless you want to include them in a trade for a comparable or like-minded piece. Like if I was trading London right now, I would look to get in. If I wanted to trade London right now, which I don't, Joe says that he does. But if
London is on my all-time never touch list. I'm being very clear about that. And
I understand that. I understand that, but I'm very clear that I still do like London. You can move him probably if you're looking to move London. You could probably get Cortland Sutton and something else back. Knowing that London does have a higher ceiling than Sutton on a weekly basis. You can buy a little bit lower on George Pickens right now because after the week, people are going to oversell, and rightfully so, the return of CeeDee Lamb. But again, George Pickens still had a good game, 4 receptions for 80 yards. Like he pops one into the end zone. That's all of a sudden a really good game for George Pickens again. So I could see that as being a reasonable, if I was selling Rome to move into George Pickens, that's fine. That's something fine with me, but I tend to keep both of them. For real, the tight end usage on Thursday Night Football was wild. With JD5 potentially missing next week, which do we like more, Flacco at the Jets or Rattler at Tampa Bay?
Flacco.
I like Flacco. I like Flacco because Rattler is not again, Flacco isn't immune to turnovers as well, but the Jets are not really causing that many. And Tampa Bay,
mine's not about the floor, mine's about the ceiling. Flacco could throw 5 touchdowns.
Flacco could absolutely throw. I think Flacco's minimum touchdowns is like going to be 3. Connected
because they're not running the ball. It's not going to happen.
And Rattler's ceiling we saw is 2. Rattler's ceiling is 2. Everybody in the chat, we will answer all these questions. I want to get back to Ravens here. All right, great. it's Jordan Mason and Mason Taylor at tight end. So that clarifies a lot of stuff. So let's answer this question for Ravens here. When it looks
at back to your original roster, what your question was, should you move or not? And one of your big problems was you had a lot of guys, including King Henry, that just didn't perform well enough in the first half. King Henry is one of these buy low, out of sight, out of mind guys that we probably should have brought up more in some of these trade options today, Bob, because he is infinitely better than Brees.
But some of the reasons we didn't was because some of the people in the chat did have Henry already.
That's true.
So you can't buy low on something you already have.
The Ravens' schedule is so soft for the next 9 games, and they are when their hardest run defense they're going to face is, I'm pretty sure, the Browns at home. They're going to destroy them. I mean, King Henry is going to have the second half of the season that he did last year, and maybe this time he'll get love for it. Probably won't, but he should. So King Henry is 100% a guy who's going to turn your team around.
Face the Bengals twice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So my answer for you is that from your running back spot, Jordan Mason is your number 2 running back right now.
Well, Judkins is his number
spot of your team.
Judkins is his number 2 running back.
Was that?
Yeah. Judkins is his number 2 running back. He's starting Judkins in the flex. So Judkins is his number 2 running back.
However you want to say that, flex then is his weakest spot. We need to upgrade that back end starter because Judkins, your 2 AFC North running backs will carry you. London, as I've mentioned a gajillion times, is a guy I'm looking at moving. I'm okay now that Fields is out, having Taylor a little bit more so, but I'm looking at moving London right now. I mean, that's my answer.
And you wouldn't be selling high or buying low on him. You'd just be moving him for whatever his value is. I mean, again, like people have
if you could do London for Devontae Smith, I would do that right now in a second.
I would not. That's not something to do. But I do think that utilizing your assets to move into some pieces like that would not be a bad idea. The thing is that I don't see it, and Joe, you might disagree with me, and that's fair. But I feel that when I look at London and I look at Devonta Smith, from just to strictly, and not a player profile perspective, but from a fantasy output perspective, is that London is still very clearly the wide receiver 1 for the Falcons. And when we look at the Eagles, you have stated that you do believe that Devonta Smith, at least this year, has turned to their focus as their number 1 wide receiver.
It's not definitive yet. It will be definitive by next year.
It's a fair assessment to make. But when I look at player capital and I looked at Devonta Smith just had a 36-point game, I'm not buying him after the 36-point game. I'm buying him again when he goes back down to the 8.
That's also fair because Devonta is so up and down.
So, but what I do for you, Ravens, when I look at the rest of your team, I see players that are dealing with some injuries. You're 2 and 4. You've dealt with a lot of injuries, but you have McLaurin, Vidal. You even have Mooney on your team. Gadsden, Mims, okay, it is what it is, right? You have Darnold as your quarterback. I think it's okay to slot in Darnold as your quarterback, and you don't have to go out and get another quarterback if that's what you're worried about. But when I look at your wide receiver position, I do agree that, with Joe, that you are going to have some up and down games here. But I think your team is solid. It's just hit some bad stretches at times. If I can play Darnold, London, listen, Joe, like Darnold, London, Lamb, Henry, Mason, or Henry, Judkins, Mason Taylor, and then Jordan Mason, where I said at the top of your question when you first asked it, Ravens, and then you have Johnston there who's going to come back and perform as he needs to. But where I see the problematic spot and the least consistent spot on your roster, it's your tight end. And am I okay waiting on Mason Taylor? Yeah, I'm okay on waiting on Mason Taylor. But to Joe's point, if I could trade London, say, into a McBride or Ferguson.
Well, McBride's a false herring. As soon as Kyler comes back, McBride's value dies.
But again, if I can move him into a tight end who is going to give me a bit more consistent production with less spiky weeks, right? I would be able to move one of those wide receivers to get into there. But you don't have a super amount of depth. And at this point in the season, you don't want so much depth, but you do want to move it to pieces that you are going to plan on starting on a weekly basis, penny matchups. So like if I have London and Mooney, there's never really a time where I'm going to have both of them in my lineup unless I absolutely need to because of bye weeks. So moving on from one of them makes sense to me. Pick which one you want to move on from. And if you try to sell Mooney, you could sell Mooney and Caleb Williams probably and I know Caleb Williams had a trash game this week, but he does perform well. You could sell both of them, I think, into like a mid-tier tight end that's not gonna kill your roster, and you keep everything on the top pretty much the same.
Here's what I would do, Ravens.
And Gadsden looks great. Gadsden looks great right now, and you could slot him in over Taylor too. I honestly don't think you have to do much.
I think you just I would do this, and this is a home run swing to win the whole thing. If the guy who has Puka is in win now mode, similar record to yours, I'm offering London and your tight end for Puka and his tight end.
No, you're offering London and Mason or something. You're offering London and a running back or something like that to get into some guy like Puka. But you're 2-4. You can't buy.
Yeah, you're right. Fine. You're adding the extra piece of Mason as well. That's fine.
What I'm saying is that
absorb the Puka coming out there because when Johnston is back,
I think your team's fine.
Even though he played last week, Johnston's a fine receiver too for this roster.
I think it's fine at this moment in time. Someone offered me Javonte Williams for Chase Brown, Addison, Vidal. He's 2-5 and looking for some players. I think that's a little bit much to pay for Javonte at this moment in time.
I don't.
I think I wouldn't add in Vidal. I would ask, would you do it for Chase Brown and Addison? I'd rather keep Vidal or keep Addison.
I'd rather keep Addison. I'd do Chase Brown and Vidal for it. Push came to shove, I think I'd accept that.
If he's looking for players and you're giving him a 2-for-1 rather than a 3-for-1, because understanding that he's going to have to drop two guys anyway, have him send those over too.
Another guy of his team to balance it out. Make it a 3-for-2.
Quincy, I got a trade offer. He wants my HN and Higgins for Lamar and Genty. I really don't want to trade HN, but Daniel's hurt. I'm 7-0. I picked up Flack off the waivers. Do I hold or click it? I think you hold. Your team.
I want to trade Higgins.
Your team, Quincy, by all recollection, is a very solid team that just got slammed by some injuries. And this is for your team at least, this is a pretty big shakeup. Flacco.
You're not playing both Daniels and Lamar.
While Lamar doesn't have while Flacco doesn't have a higher ceiling than Lamar on a weekly basis, he's also on this offense not going to have an incredibly low floor on a weekly basis as well, unless he gets hurt. So, I mean, I think it's smart for you to have gone after Flacco, but you're sitting there at 7-0, and I'm not entirely sure that trading away Achane and Higgins and Lamar and Genty is the best you can do, but I don't think that I don't actually think it's like bad though, because Lamar comes back, he scores 30 points. You're sitting on another 30-point quarterback, and you can move Jaden Daniels when he comes back healthy.
So Quincy, I don't want Genty. I don't want to get rid of Higgins. So if you can do it Achane and a different piece for Lamar, I'd entertain that.
But I do think you'd want to get a running back, which is fair. So that's kind of the viewpoint there. We already answered that question. Where was I? In the chat. I'm all turned around. Okay. So there was Quincy there. Ava, should I still start Cade Otton even if Igbokwe plays, or start Dalton Schultz?
No, go with Schultz.
Honestly, I don't think Igbokwe plays.
I also think Schultz outscores Otton.
Everything that I've been hearing, Igbokwe doesn't play. And in terms of Dalton Schultz, it's a good enough matchup where Dalton Schultz can fall into the end zone. He's getting, and this is going to be a fun stat for some people, over the course of this season, so he's gotten 5 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets. 5 catches, 5 catches, 5 catches in the last 3 weeks. So is it possible that he gets 5 more catches this week and has a solid enough floor for you of like 9 points? Sure. And I think Cade Otton could get you there as well, but Schultz is solid. So if Igbokwe's playing, you could slot in Schultz. I think you could slot in Schultz either way as well. But I think that they're very low kind of ceiling plays if Evans is back for sure. Jesse, would you drop Henderson for Smith or Monangai? If I could drop Henderson and pick up both of those guys, I would. I would probably lean on Smith though.
Yeah, me too.
I would probably lean on Smith. Haley, trade away Zach Ertz or Hawk for Golden. They need a tight end and is okay with either for Golden. Do you really want Matthew Golden? That's the question I'm going to ask you, Haley.
But you don't want Hawk. I would get rid of. I would do that with. I'd flip a coin on which tight end to get rid of.
What are you doing this because you want a high upside kind of play at wide receiver? Because Golden's going to get there, but it's going to take him a couple weeks to get there. So you can't really play him right now. So if you're looking for a startable asset right now, I wouldn't really be looking so much at Matthew Golden, although I do like him for the long term. You see his snap share has gone up, and that's a good thing. So just keep that in mind.
The other question is, will it maintain after Reed comes back?
Yeah, because he's not in that same usage role as Reed coming out of that bye. Coming out of the bye, he had a much different usage rate than when he went into the bye. So I think it's an interesting play. And I think it's fair enough. So Nino, back to your question here. The other guy's team was Lamar, Kyron, Jacoby Krusky, Merritt Dowdle, CD, Rice, Debo, Waddle, Flowers, Goder. He's been wanting to get CMC from me. Any trade ideas? So you said your team was Dax, CMC, Chase, Pacheco, Harvey, Algier, Benson, Diggs, Io Manor, Jacoby Burton. You've been wanting a wide receiver for a long time, Nino. You have said this for a while.
Get Jamar, dude.
I think if you've been offered Jamar with Mason, it clears up the whole am I starting Pacheco, Harvey debate. Just throw Chase Brown and put Mason into your lineup on a weekly basis. Put Chase in with Diggs, and maybe you want to move another piece like McBride or something like that. If I'm looking at this grouping of players, I think it's reasonable to buy a little bit lower on guys like Zay Flowers and Debo. There are better days ahead for them, especially for Debo now that he's, still recovering from the injury. And I don't know if they're going to cost you a lot, but I think Flowers has a really high upside, and he doesn't really hurt you that much in terms of your wide receiver market anyway. So I would definitely look to acquire Flowers. Like if I could get, for example, right, if I could trade CMC into like Rice, Flowers, and Jacoby Krusky Merritt, that's something that I would absolutely consider too, because it gives me a little bit more depth along the line, and then I have a couple more pieces to play with. It just depends on what you want to do overall. And if you want to target Kyron, then it could be like Kyron, Debo and Flowers for CMC and like Diggs or something like that. It gives you a couple of pieces to work with. I think that there's a lot to play with there. Manster, I'm up by 20 and I still have 2 players to go. My opponent has Amon-Ra to play, so a little scary, but I got to decide between 2 people. out of Igbuka, K9, Auten, and Sharps. I think this decision
I
is going to be made.
Seattle running backs.
I think this decision is going to be made for you prior to game time. Again, Igbuka will want to play. Like, I'm not saying that he's doesn't want to play, but every news report that I have seen states that he should not play. So while he's a true game time decision, that's only because it's Monday. But I don't expect him to. I don't expect him to play that much. Igbuka just got set to play. I don't see it, guys. And I'm hoping that it doesn't hurt him long term, because that injury, I just don't see it. I see 46 minutes ago, Buccaneers wide receiver status. All right, let's check it out. Left last week when with a hamstring injury. He comes at a time. And Emeka Egbuka will play tonight, Rick Stroud said after testing his hamstring pregame. Again, I don't like that as an owner of Egbuka. I don't like that. Do you trust it though, Manster? Is this going to be like a Kamara flu game? Or is this going to be, I mean, Jacobs was dealing with an injury, came out with 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's a risk. If you need to win and he is your best chance to hit that ceiling, then play him. But again, I don't see it as being profitable for them in the long term to start their star young wide.
And to your point, man, so since you need the save points, you don't go with them. The safest route you have is the 2 Seattle running backs.
I agree with that. It's low. It's a low ceiling, but it's a safe play.
And that's what you need is safety. That's what we go with there.
Tucker or Tez if Igbuka is active. I still think Tez. Here's the thing, guys. Like, all right, when we look at this and we say all week they were pointing to, oh, this hamstring injury is not great. Oh, this hamstring injury isn't great. Oh, this hamstring injury isn't great. Now you're playing. Come on. Young guys always
you don't normally do that with rookies if you're trying to hide it. You do it with people who are in their prime.
Young guys always want to play. So if given the choice to play, he's going to play. Now I trust the doctors. I get it. But the initial fear was that he would miss at least 1 game. So if that was your fear and now you're good to go, he's young. So maybe it works out in his favor. I hope so. Would you ask for Scadaboo and Lamar for HN and Higgins? Yeah, that I would do something like that. I understand, Joe, you don't want to give up a guy like Higgins. I get it. But I think that's good value back. Again, Judkins, Scadaboo, Kyron are just some, and Swift are some guys that are play now, play later type of guys to look into, because we know these are the facts.
I want Lamar. I would do that. I would do that with Scadaboo.
These are the facts that we know about the NFL.
I also do want to get rid of A-Chain, so I would do that.
These are the facts that we know. Every Colts game is going to be competitive because the defense isn't is injured and not as good as people thought. Tennessee can be run on. Anybody can score on the Raiders, except for Tennessee. But even Tennessee scored a couple of points there. And Tennessee is not that good. So there are some fundamental facts that we know about certain defenses, and I would target. And again, with the Browns defense as well, I would target on any player that's playing Miami, Dallas, Chicago, Saints, and Colts. So if those teams are on your schedule for your fantasy players, I think you're going to have a good time. If they're not, a little bit concerning. I'm just so surprised, though. Really didn't expect him to play. Nino, I'm with you, man. I'm with you, because if they come out and I think, though, at the very first inclination that there's any type of risk to any long-term sustained injury, that they're pulling him from that game. So yeah, he might play at this moment in time, but the first hit he takes, they might take him off the field. So I do worry about something like that. Again, Quentin Johnston just came back from an injury as well. He was on the field for however many snaps we said. Was it 70-something snaps? Some ridiculous amount. Yeah. So he was on the field. So he came back from an injury, was on the field for 68 snaps, ran around 56 times, but was only targeted 5 times. I don't see it as being a definite thing that they're going to target him more than 5 times. Dealing with an injury, he's probably going to be a little bit slower. There's a lot to not like about that situation. Drifters. And this, and after Drifters, we'll get to your deep dive there, CC. I saw some people had some deep dives up in there. Picked up a dead team, currently 4-2. But I don't give enough guys to fill out a decent roster. Would you sell Jonathan Taylor or Warren to get more assets? Yeah. If I have Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren, and I have a roster that's sitting at 4-2, and I want more assets, Jonathan Taylor is the king of the castle at this moment in time. Him, no, I'm not saying Igbuka is going to be a decoy. I'm absolutely not saying he's going to be a decoy, because why risk the health of your young wide receiver just to be a decoy? I'm saying that I legitimately, if he's playing tonight, Drifter,
he's going to pull a blame at some point.
If he's playing tonight, I think what's going to happen is they're going to start him, and they're going to give him what they would think is a complement of snaps that is fair for his injury. Okay. And that could be 25 snaps. If he's playing, that doesn't mean he's playing a full complement of snaps. It just means that he's ready to go. And again, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want him to win. Kittle was totally a decoy yesterday, but the thing about George Kittle is that George Kittle is a great blocker as well. Mm-hmm. So they don't need to feature him in the passing game. With Igbuka, you're going to feature him in the passing game. Again, when it comes to stuff like this with injuries, he can absolutely come out and light it up. I mean, there is a narrative that you can write where that's going to be the case. But when you think about in terms of fantasy football outcomes, volume is king, and it's king for wide receivers. And when you're coming off an injury that you thought was going to be 1 week absence, and now maybe it was going to be a 1 week absence if the game was played on Sunday, but the game is being played on Monday. But they knew that going into last week. So why say, oh, he might miss Monday's game? They knew they had a game on Monday, right? If it wasn't that bad, I can see you something like 25 to 35 snaps and probably about 4 targets. I don't see it as anything being crazy. I just think that there's a chance that that would be tricky.
CC, there is no way I can stretch this into a deep dive. There is no way in hell any Las Vegas Raider is a league winner. There is no way to try to turn that into a happy thing. The answer is no. It is a dead offense that is wanting to get the first pick in the draft. They might do it because the Saints had to go ahead and get a win. So the reality is I think that with their coach, they have a good chance of doing it. They're sitting at 1 win because they won their opening game. But I do not see Brock Bowers putting up anywhere near anything sufficient. Geno Smith historically implodes as the year goes on. And by the time Brock Bowers comes back, Geno will probably no longer be his NFL starting quarterback.
CC, here's what I'm going to say about Brock Bowers. No, I don't think Brock Bowers is going to be a league winner. However, Brock Bowers' price has consistently fallen. Okay. And, there have been many times where we have been incorrect. And there have been many times where we have victory lapped.
More when we are correct.
where we have victory lapped a little too early. But when it comes to guys like Brock Bowers, if you remember us talking in the offseason, Brock Bowers at the price was a terrible buy. Mm-hmm. Now, he was injured. Granted, that sucks. Injuries shouldn't be counted within that stretch. But they are, unfortunately. But when I look at a guy like Brock Bowers, this is what I see. And this is, do I think he's a league winner? No. But this is how I can see him as being an asset to your fantasy team, right? Right now, you have Brock Bowers, or you might not have Brock Bowers. Let's go with instance 1 where you have Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers has been sitting on your bench for quite some time. And let's say when he comes back, he goes back to his normal stable-ish amount of targets of around 8. Okay. We know that Brock Bowers is capable of going over 100 yards on 8 targets. That is something that we know is a fact. We also know that there are limited high upside pass catchers within this offense, and they're going to run through a gauntlet that might not be as great for running backs in the near future. But it could be. So when we look at this and we say, how are they going to be moving the ball downfield, if at all? Because you don't have to move the ball down the field. We saw this out of the New York Jets. You don't have to move the ball down your field. That's one of the fallacies of the NFL. There's a chance that you don't move the ball down the field and you get net of negative 11 passing yards. So when you look at this from just that kind of perspective, is that one thing doesn't necessarily equate to the other. But I will say that when it comes to a player like Brock Bowers, if I have him on my roster right now, when he comes back a week after, you see a game from him and he's healthy, he is going to be a start again. And he's going to be fine enough. He's going to get his targets. If he goes over 100 yards, you're going to be happy. It's going to have limited touchdown upside. Again, if I am sitting there and I don't have Brock Bowers, and I'm sitting there and I have the likes of Mason Taylor, like I said, he's a guy that I like. Harold Fannin, another guy that I like. And I can sit on some young tight end talent, and I can maybe throw the guy who has Brock Bowers, assumedly, is not doing as well in your league, maybe, unless they went out and bought another tight end early. In the case that, is he going to be a league winner? He could potentially, let's say you bought him and you said, I'm going to trade you Kayshon Boutte and a piece for a guy like Brock Bowers. The Brock Bowers owner won't probably sell for that price. But again, they've eaten all these weeks. So the price is still going to be high, but they know they're not going to get back a lot of value in return, and they're going to want to win games now. Okay. So if you can go out and get Brock Bowers for something that will allow a team to win now, and you're okay eating that back end cost, Brock Bowers could have a role on your roster that's going to be quite productive in the near future. Again, do I think he's a league winner? No. But is there a framework where he can be productive for your fantasy roster? Absolutely. Is he going to be a comfortable start on a week-to-week basis? Probably not. But this is an organizational thing, like Joe said at the beginning. It's an organizational thing. The whole organization is not doing as well as projected, and they're in for some rough weeks ahead. And Geno Smith is the type of player that makes a lot of mistakes, and they're going to capitalize on that. But Brock Bowers is going to play a critical role in this offense, and he's not going to see a decreased role when he comes back because he's their young tight end. He's going to see what he would see anyway because they want him to continue to play.
Doesn't mean they get the ball to him.
Well, they're going to. I do think they get the ball to him. Again, I do think they're going to get the ball to him. Geno Smith's not Justin Fields. Well,
they got the ball to Ridley too last year, but it turned into nothing. I think you're going to get a lot of that.
And that's fair. So Santiago, when I look at this question, and this is for anybody out there right now, this is
I would 100% do that.
This is a player we haven't brought up. It's a player that flies so much under the radar that we forget about him most of the time, and it's James Cook. James Cook has had, again, bye week this week, pedestrian games a couple of weeks in a row after some blow-up games. This is the James Cook way. James Cook, for anybody looking to buy a running back right now, is an asset that I would absolutely, unequivocally buy at this moment in time. I think that if you buy him, you are set up for some future success. And here's why. You ready, Joe? Watch the schedule. All right. We have Panthers, which again, moderate to good run defense. Chiefs, moderate to good run defense. Dolphins, Bucks, Texans, Steelers, Bengals, Patriots, Browns in your semifinals. So that could be a rough one. And then the Eagles, which should be a good enough matchup for them as well. So while the playoff schedule is not great, he'll get you to the playoffs. And you'll have to figure out what to do then. But I think that that's a good play. And Drifter, in terms of your question here, I think Henry is absolutely a good start to get back in a return from Taylor. Henry plus two more pieces. I think I would sell Taylor for that price. Depends on the pieces. But if I was getting Henry plus an asset wide receiver and a guy that I can have as a startable flex play, I think I would do something like that. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, no, I'm totally with that.
And like I said, right here, I mean, like you said here, it's an arms race. people want to acquire the talent for the home stretch. So if you threw Gibbs out on the trade block to see what you could get from him, everybody would be chomping at the bit to get him. Taylor's the same way. CMC's the same way. Take what you can get if you need to sell. I mean, that's kind of the goal of today. If you need to sell, move into something where you see as being and like Joe said, you're either playing as if you are going to make the playoffs or you are playing for the short term. If you are playing for the short term, there are assets to go after. If you are playing the long game, then all you need to look at is who's playing Miami, who's playing the Bengals, who's playing Dallas, who's playing the Commanders, and to a lesser extent, who's playing Arizona and Chicago. And I think you kind of have your answer. So just as a note, guys, before we leave, here's the Bears. Here's the playoff schedule for the Bears. Okay. Browns, Packers, 49ers. Wheels up on CMC if he's healthy, by the way, on that. Then you go to the Dolphins. Let me get to the NFL schedule grid here. Okay. So if we go to the schedule grid here, I just had to pull it up here. And we take a look at who Miami's playing. Miami's going to be hitting you with Steelers, Cincy, Tampa. Wheels up for Rachaad White, Bucky Irving in Fantasy Championship Week. New Orleans has Tennessee in Week 17, Jets Week 16, Carolina Week 15. That will be important to monitor for guys like Olave. Cincinnati, again, Baltimore, Miami, Arizona. That's a reason to buy into Lamar for everybody that asked about Lamar. That's also a reason to maybe. And Joe, this is a name we haven't mentioned a lot on the show, but I think it's important to mention. Trey Benson. When Trey Benson comes back healthy, is Bam Knight still going to get the majority of these looks on this?
Benson will take it all instantly.
So Benson could be a nice sneaky buy for anybody looking for a running back, potentially coming off the waivers. And then Kansas City, they play the Chargers, Tennessee, and Denver the last 3 games of the season for fantasy playoffs. Unfortunately, Week 18 is Tennessee, so they don't get that dip. But Rashard Smith, absolutely a guy to kind of target because, Denver has a good defense, but they don't have a good rush defense. And so that kind of needs to be marked. And then Seattle, guys, or not Seattle, but Seattle to a lesser degree, Indianapolis, Rams, and Carolina. So, I mean, looking into all of those situations, and Joe, again, these situations can potentially change as the season goes on. But right now, if you're looking to just target playoff schedules, Miami, Bears, Cincinnati, those are teams to totally target. And the Ravens, Tampa Bay, they line up pretty nicely to that. And Drifters, will leave this with your comment here. Rashard Smith's time is coming. So everybody, we'll be back with you on Thursday, 3:45 Eastern Standard Time with all your questions, comments, start, sits, answers. Thank you for joining us. Like, follow, subscribe. We'll be with you Thursday, 3:45 Eastern. Thank you, guys.